Hi, welcome to On TV. Well, I'm here in the studio with one of our local authors. Mike Seymour is from down the line. He lives on St. Joe's Island and in fact was born and raised on the island. Mike has been a teacher, a professor, an adjunct professor at Lake Superior State University in the English department and communication and public speaking, and as well has taught high school English in Windsor, Ontario. So I'd like to welcome you, Mike, to our studio.
Thank you
You for coming in. So Mike has written some different books, but the ones that we're going to talk about tonight are Island Passages, The Maple Hill and Other Journeys, and it is a collection of short stories. The other book this is one that's full of intrigue and is called The Incident at Fort St. Joseph, and it is an incident that took place during the War of 1812. So we'll get to all of that. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Now, Mike, let's start talking about the Island Passages. What is it that drew you to want to write about some short stories from the island?
Well, growing up there, it was a very rich place for all of this. It was very isolated.
Right.
And at one time, everybody knew everybody else by name.
Sure.
And there was quite a history. My parents would tell me stories about the island and that kind of thing. It had a railway.
It did?
Yes.
Oh, for heaven's
sakes. The Nip and
sakes.
Tuck. It went up to the mountain and got timber and brought it down to the mill in Hilton Beach.
Oh, for
So there was a really colorful history, and with the neighbors and with that one-on-one, we had a lot of intimate relationships, and it was good for that. Yes.
Right. So when you were on the island, was that when there was still a ferry that got us across
Yes.
from one point
Yes.
to the other?
Yes.
Are there any of the stories about the ferry in
Yes.
here?
Yes. There's one called the Ferry.
Is there? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. So
yeah.
can you elaborate a little bit for us?
I
What are some of
can. Yeah, I got a job as a deckhand on the ferry.
Oh, for goodness
The
sakes.
last year it was in operation.
Okay.
And I worked there as a summer job. I was going to the University of Windsor at the time, and they were building the bridge. So it was the Wilson Channel was quite a
Wilson Channel?
yeah. It was
Is that
quite,
the name of the channel that runs?
Yes,
Wilson Channel.
it was
Okay.
quite a clutter of machinery and that kind of thing. And it was very
Right.
colorful.
Yeah.
And when I was lucky enough to be hired on, people had worked there for years and years and years. And I was a new blood, and I got all the stories, and they enjoyed my company, and we had quite a few very humorous experiences.
Sure, I bet.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever see anybody in a station wagon that didn't make the last ferry back across?
All the time.
After visiting my Auntie Dolores and Uncle Norm at the Caw Hills and Sailors Encampment?
All the time. And
Yeah.
it's a love story. Some of the people who were working on the bridge were staying at this cabin next to my mom and dad's, and one of the young ladies and I had a summer fling. So
Okay.
it's mixed up in that, and it speaks to the transition people had to make when
Yes.
we were no longer isolated.
Right.
So it gets into those kinds of
Right.
things.
Yeah, that would absolutely change the fabric of the island,
Absolutely,
wouldn't it?
yeah. Once the bridge was in, things changed forever.
Right,
Yeah.
that's very, very true.
Yeah.
Now, let's take a look at some of the other stories in here. Can you elaborate on, Can you elaborate on any of the stories that, or maybe speak to some of the maple growing, like the maple
absolutely.
syrup history?
Absolutely. The Maple Hill School was a one-room school, grades 4 through 8. And I bragged that when I was in grade 6, I came third in my class because there were 3 of us.
There was 3 of you, okay.
And it bragged when I went there grades 5 and 6, and there were 28 students in the whole school. And our professor, our teacher, had to choreograph his lessons, start with grade 5 and get them something to do, and then grade 6, and then grade 7, and then grade 8.
Right.
Which was like the really good concept, because if I finished my homework first, I got to listen to the lessons he was giving to
Right.
other students, and it was a great learning environment.
Right.
The gentleman who taught us was very strict,
Okay.
and a lot of it alludes to the atmosphere of the school.
Okay.
And a lot of it's kind of shocking in the sense that people say to me, did those things really happen? And well, sure they did.
Right.
Sure they did. There was just for an example, there was one student who was put in grade 6, and he was barely literate.
Okay.
And we had bullies in the school.
Sure.
Yeah. They were good bullies. They were okay bullies, but they give us 5 minutes in the winter because the teacher would lock us out of the school, and we would go running into the bush. They give us 5 minutes, and then they come after us.
Oh my gosh.
And whoever they caught got tied up in a fence, or they broke a hole in the pond and dipped us in the pond, or took our shoes and socks.
So are those are all buried in this book somewhere?
And Brian didn't know how to read or write.
Okay.
And of course, when he got there, the bullies looked at him and they were rubbing their hands and salivating. And the first noon hour, we all, of course, ran into the bush.
The maple bush.
And we got back into class, and the teacher said, "Where's Brian?"
Oh dear.
And the bullies.
Where was Brian?
Well, Brian was tied up in a tree in a burlap bag hanging from a branch.
Oh my gosh.
And so I remember watching the three of them, the two bullies and the teacher, walking through the yard and into the bush. And they got to the tree, and he said, where is he? Well, he's here. Where? And we pointed up.
He was way up there. Holy
way
smokes.
up in the tree, hanging from a branch.
Well, hang on. We gotta pick Brian back up in a second here, and hopefully Brian is okay.
Yeah.
But we're just gonna take a quick little break here, Mike,
Okay.
and we'll get right back to this. Hi, welcome back. I'm here with author Mike Seymour, who has just been sharing some of the great stories that he has come across and has lived experience from St. Joe's Island, in Island Passages, the Maple Hill, and other journeys. Now, Mike, let's talk about the process for this. How long did it take? What was it that got you started on
It only took me 63 years.
It's a reflective journey.
I was reading some short stories, not that one. Gee, I can do that. I've written poetry all my life. I can do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And my childhood is rife with stories, and they were in my head, and it was just a matter of sitting down and doing it.
Right.
And once I got my first few stories written, of course, it got easier and easier.
Sure.
Although, according to Donald Murray, who won a Pulitzer Prize for writing,
Okay.
80% of the task is getting started.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the case with me.
Yeah.
Once I get started, I'm okay. But getting started is a tough go.
Right.
But stories about my childhood, stories my parents passed down to me.
Okay.
Because they were, my mother's family came over from Ireland during the potato famine.
Oh, okay.
And they were given land to settle on the island.
Okay.
100 acres, but they had to clear so much, and they had to have a permanent structure, and then they
Yes.
would be given the land.
Okay.
So that's how they landed there. So I'm fourth generation islander.
What year would that be?
My great-grandfather came over in 1867, and he settled in southern Ontario but moved up here.
Right.
And then the rest, of course, is history. And they talked about hardships that they had,
Right.
and they talked about hardships on the island, because people would come there with nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
And there was a story they had, this one fellow got dropped off by the boat, because there was no bridge or anything at that time, or ferry, and he had a crop of seed potato. So he planted it, but he got so hungry that he had to dig it up and eat it.
Sure, yeah.
And so there are stories like that.
Yeah, there's other stories like that as well.
Oh,
for
and
sure.
there are a few dark stories in there.
Absolutely.
But they're true. They're based on true stories.
Now, do you have any story? Do you? I haven't had a chance to read the entire book yet, but have you got a story about anyone that comes across the channel there, the North Channel, over around the Sailors Encampment area? Are you aware of any stories from in that
Well,
area?
that's where this gentleman came from.
I see.
because
So he crossed over from the Upper Peninsula.
And that was quite a bustling place.
Yes, I understand that.
For boats, and so a lot
And
of
people
the
crossing the ice in the winter.
yeah,
you know?
and a lot of immigrants
Going
came
to
across.
Bruce Mines, etc.
Yeah, and for a few weeks in the fall and in the spring, there was no contact with the mainland whatsoever.
Right.
And again, stories my mom told about people with teams of horses. They'd go across the ice and they'd hit a soft spot, and a horse would go in and bring the rest of them in, and the sleigh. And so a lot of people lost. And a team of horses back then was the livelihood.
That's
that was
right.
it.
Absolutely dear to have
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So, you know, there are hardships, yes, but a wonderful place to grow up, certainly.
And you were saying you from Gowas Bay was kind of your stomping
That's
grounds
where
in those
my
days.
grandfather was given 100 acres.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a beautiful spot.
It certainly is, yeah.
St. Joseph Island is absolutely a remarkable place in the universe. And to have this collection of stories, I'm really hoping that folks will get a chance to look at it, look for it on Amazon, because, you know, we have Christmas coming up, and Lord knows that we all have enough stuff. But do we have enough stories? I don't think so. There's always room for stories in our lives. And I would really like to encourage people to go ahead and pick up a copy of this, go to Amazon, or reach out to Mike as well. And I'll post his email address at the end of our interview here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. This is fantastic. It's always great to be able to support people who are taking the time to write it down, document things, share their stories, because storytelling it's everything to our past.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I'd like to move to the incident at Fort St. Joseph.
Yes.
Now, this is full of intrigue, and we don't have a lot of time, I'm sorry to say, Mike.
That's okay.
But can you give us the rundown of this, because people can find this as well through reaching out to Mike. And it's really interesting. It's not super long, but it's based on one specific incident that happened at Fort St. Joseph.
Fort St. Joseph was, the enlisted man had it pretty rough.
I can imagine.
You know, they say, well, the cuisine was varied, because one night we had pork and beans, the next night we had beans and pork. And it was a miserable place. The blockhouse where the men slept was made of green timber, so there were cracks, and snow would blow in, and they'd have to brush the snow from their bedclothes, and they washed in the same big tub that was used as a urinal.
Okay.
They'd take it and they'd rinse it out and bring it back in.
It was a vessel.
And then they'd wash with it. So they had it really rough. And these guys figured, well, okay, we're going to desert to the American side.
All right.
And Fort Mackinac, which was built by the British,
that's quite a distance.
It was a lot better.
Okay.
You know, a lot better food, a lot better in so many respects.
That was the scuttlebutt.
That was it, and they wanted to take off and go there. So they set off over the ice in April.
My goodness.
And they got caught up in a snowstorm.
No doubt.
And the one guy, they found the one guy about 30 miles when they sent out the search party the next day. And they say he was the lucky one because he was frozen.
Oh.
And they found Kiri a little bit further on, almost within sight of the American fort. And he was dragged back to the fort, and he lost both of his legs from the knees down and all of his fingers for frostbite.
This poor man.
So I think Minot is buried at the fort, and I think Kiri is as well. Although that's
and
not
say their
very
names
clear.
again? Kiri and?
Minot.
Minot, and it's quite an interesting spelling. M-Y-N-A-G-H.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Well, folks, intrigue is just a shout out away. If you reach out to Mike Seymour, he'll make sure that you can get a copy of this. It's also available at Fort St. Joseph. And one little tidbit about Mike is if you attend the Ghost Walk in the spring at Fort St. Joseph, you will see this gentleman, and he's playing one of the two, the Kiri, is that right?
I'm Kiri, and I sit in this box where my legs are covered, and I bunch my hands up like this, so it looks like I have no fingers, and I'm miserable, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet it is. Well, listen, thank you very, very much for coming in. And folks, reach out to Mike or go to Amazon.com and find a copy of Island Passages, The Maple Hill, and Other Journeys. Storytelling is part of our fabric of being a good Canadian. Thank you.